Hello. It's been a few weeks, and there's a few things to go over in this video. The past few weeks have been spent largely on smaller changes, along with a number of fixes here and there, so there's not a lot of exciting things to talk about, but some of the changes are big enough to devote a bit of time to talk about them. I guess to start off with one of the lesser interesting items, I've continued adding graphical options so that the user can tailor their experience. I feel it's important to allow these kind of changes, even if they're not a lot of fun to talk about. The ever important field of view slider has been added, along with texture quality options, as that's been a major performance bottleneck on some of the systems I've tested on. Things like mouse look sensitivity has been added as well, to add to things like resolution and some usability changes that were added in previous updates. The biggest thing to talk about in this update, I suspect, is that the Steam page is now live. Most of you who know this project through Discord will have already seen this, but I'm excited to talk about it regardless. I want to thank all of the early wishlisters, and I appreciate all of the kind words and encouragement I've received up to this point. I do plan on regular updates through both YouTube and Discord going forward, and at this point, my hope is to have a playable demo out for one of the upcoming next fests on Steam, so stay tuned to that if you're interested. No guarantees at this point, but I would say it's looking pretty good in that respect. So again, thanks to everyone who's been supporting this project with your words and your encouragement and sharing it around. I very much appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have something to put in your hands before too terribly long into the future. On a more technical side, I've made some major changes to how force is applied to sails. Previously, the orientation of the sails, hull, and yards, along with the direction and intensity of the wind, were all taken into effect to calculate the effectiveness of the sails in propelling the hull. This generally worked, but in some cases could lead to visual inconsistency. For example, as you can see here, the ship could maintain a pretty high speed even if the sailcloth was tangled up in the masts and rigging or lacked the range and movement needed to fill with wind, so long as the angle and intensity of the wind was favorable. Whereas with the new changes, the fullness of a given sail is taken into consideration when calculating how effective it would be. So in this example, even though the wind is coming from a good angle to propel the ship, since they're all bunched up around the masts and unable to properly fill, the maximum speed of the hull is significantly degraded. So what you would want to do is adjust them so that they are able to swing around and fill with wind. That's probably about right. So now you can see with the yard and sail positioned much more appropriately to fill with wind, the ship is able to reach a much higher speed than it would have been previously. Even more so if you repeated that for both sails, but just as a quick example, sail fullness is now a much more important factor in operating the lateen sailed ships. While not exactly photo mode, sailing games seem to encourage screenshots, and so to help with this, I have added some basic camera controls to allow you to get a better shot if you're interested in making the perfect desktop background or whatever kind of image you like to capture. So we have zoom and pan and vertical motion of the camera. Likely there will be more coming in the future, but yeah, as a start, you can move around a little bit more than you previously could. I have expanded the provisioning system. Those of you who have followed the Discord for a while may remember that I'm not a huge fan of hunger bars or sort of consumable resource systems. However, I do recognize that that's a major component of life at sea, managing your resources and various elements required for life at sea. It's important. So I am working more in that direction. Currently, I have split ship provisions into 5 components: foodstuff, drink, oakum, timber, and canvas, with built-in support to add or remove any number of consumable resources as needed. So all of these items share a common provisioning pool, essentially the container to hold all of these resources does have a maximum size. The reason for this is so that you would need to manage or balance the various elements to prevent having too much of one and therefore no space for another. For example, this ship can carry 4.5 tons total. If you entirely filled that with food, you would have no room for your repair consumable resources. Please note this is pretty early and very much subject to change. You will be able to purchase provisions as well as scavenge some of them in the wild. For example, the fish that you catch can be added directly to the food portion of your provisions. So you don't have to budget out and pay for all of these items. Extending provisions, I'm experimenting with some maintenance and repair tasks. So the start of this is that the hull can begin to leak. And these kind of leaks can be repaired by packing the seams with oakum, which is consumed during the repair. So there we have packed a seam, and the leak has stopped. These leaks aren't critical. The leak rate is very low, but they will worsen the longer that they are left unrepaired. So if you don't repair them, or if you are lacking the resources needed for the repair, you will need to be diligent on your pumps to prevent being swamped or sinking outright. Much like the other components of provisioning, it's very much a work in progress or testing system. But I'm interested in people's thoughts, or to just in general show the items I'm working on. Somewhat connected to that are some changes I have made to flooding. Previously, any water over the side would contribute to floodwaters on board, whereas now the amount of water over the side that will be considered floodwater is dampened considerably by things like having all of your hatches closed. Whereas having all of your hatches open, for example, in a heavy sea, will significantly increase the rate at which water makes it below deck. So it's important to keep your hatches closed, or doors if you're on the kind of ship that has doors. Otherwise, you may very quickly find yourself in a lovely wooden submarine. And in the future, I've considered various ways of implementing, say, battened hatches or other ways of mitigating water flow. So none of that is final yet, but it is definitely something that's being considered, much like the scuppers that ships have. I aim to improve the way that those contribute to the drainage of water from the deck. But that's all very much still work in progress.